For the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks for being here on the first full day of autumn, I believe, and it feels like it. So it's time to get all the coats out and possibly wear them during the meeting. Whatever we need to do. I do want to say, obviously, what's on a lot of people's minds were the tragedy that happened last week. That our thoughts, our hearts all go out to the Briggs family. For Evan, it's just a real tragedy. And certainly to the West Bath school community as a whole. That we are all one community. And I really appreciate Patrick, and I know that our athletic director, Andrew, has been, at the heart of this and really doing a lot, and really, really appreciate all that he's done, and everyone else at RSU1 who's helped out, and as we continue to help out. And I know we want to let everyone know we'll be there for them as long and as for whatever they need us to do. But our thoughts are with them, and our hearts go out to them. So just want to acknowledge that. All right. Let's get to the minutes. Any questions before?
I move to approve the minutes as written.
And do I have a second? Second by Jennifer. Anyone other questions? All in favor? Okay. Any adjustments to the agenda? Go ahead.
I mean, just if we want to move that potential tour, if it's still light out, we can at least look out through the library and show you. So maybe we put that like last, the 12.0, and just move it down to the end.
Do we adjourn first, or do we just?
Yeah, we
can just adjourn.
Yeah,
and
we can
do the
adjourn.
tour after.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So we'll do that, and then just say a few minutes. Okay. So we'll move that down. Anything else, or is that everything? All right, then we would move to public session if anyone was here to speak from the public. No. And I'm going to hand it over to you, Patrick, to introduce our guest.
So one of the board goals from last year was to kind of around pre-K to 5 programming, but also intervention. And so we're pleased to have Beth Kaiser here, who's our RTI interventionist kind of district coach. And so she's here to give us a presentation. I sent you kind of a little bit of backup of what she's going to be talking about, but she has handouts and she's very well prepared for tonight. So thank you, Beth, for being here.
No problem. Is this, where do I? Okay.
The one that says tier 1 updates is the one that goes with the
Thank you. I usually don't present with a microphone, but is that okay? Okay, thank you. All right, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me to give you some updates from my role as the RTI coordinator from basically like a year and a couple months. I think it's been that long since I was here before. Do you want to switch to the next one? Thanks, Damien. So before I get started talking about some updates, I wanted to just give a quick review of our RTI process. And RTI stands for Response to Intervention. And it has 3 tiers that I'm going to talk about today. The first tier is really what we think about when we think of classroom instruction. So that's instruction that is provided to all students. Teachers are using the guidelines that are created by our district. Student assessment is student progress is being measured by like classroom-based assessments. For example, like at the end of a math unit, the math assessment that they might take. And also, thanks. Oh, you can go back. And also by district and state assessments. And progress through that tier is measured through those kinds of assessments and also shared with parents through report cards. Then we have an intervention system, which has 2 tiers, tiers 2 and 3. And that actually is a change from the last time I talked to you all. Last time tier 3 was more considered special ed. But since I visited last time, we have actually enhanced our interventions so that we have a more intensive tier before students may be referred for special ed. And the way that students move between the tiers, it's important to note that tier 2 is not in replacement of tier 1. It's an additional layer of instruction because we know that sometimes students need tier 1, but they also need something else. And so it's an additional layer of intervention or instruction. And the way that students move through the tiers is based on data. And we do a lot of collaborating, and I coordinate the meetings when we talk about data in different groups to decide where students should be. Does that make sense? All right. Thanks. So now I'm going to talk to you a lot about, mostly for the rest of the time, about tier 1. And you might be wondering, why, when you manage the intervention system, are you here talking to me about classroom instruction? And that is because in our RTI system, tier 1 is the heart of it. It provides most of our instruction, or it provides instruction for most of our students. And that is where most of our students' needs are met. And so it's really important to have a strong, robust tier 1 in order to have a healthy RTI system. So that's why I want to talk to you about those updates. So one of the things that I wanted to mention is we've done a lot of work to bring in or to update our programming. And here are some examples right at the top. We have updated to the 2022 version of Spelling Connections. So everyone in our district 3 through 5 is using the same version. And we're excited about that because it has better differentiation options for students within the grade level. We also, as I talked to you about last time, have updated to UFly in K2, which is a phonics spelling program. And then this year, we have a new Bridge to Writing program, which is a pilot for K3. And it's interesting because this was offered as a pilot to our kindergarten through 3rd grade teachers last year as a voluntary pilot, and everyone opted in. So we're actually doing it as a full district pilot, and there's a lot of excitement about it as people get started right now, starting to teach that program. So that will be interesting this year to see how that goes. In addition to training and doing the work around deciding on new programs with our committees and bringing in the materials that we need, I also work on updating our assessments to make sure that they're a better match with the changes that we've made so that students can reflect on their progress and also teachers can make good decisions about instruction based on how students are progressing. So those are just some examples. Something else that I do as part of my role is around training and professional development. And I work with all different kinds of educators in our district, whether it's interventionists or special ed. But a lot of what I'm going to tell you about today is classroom instruction. So like, for example, we have our grade level days where all of the teachers from one grade level get together for a whole day and work on a shared agenda. And those are pretty exciting because when you get all the teachers who teach one grade level together and they get to collaborate about what they do, that's really powerful and inspiring. So we do that 2 times a year. This picture is actually of Donna Tardif, who is teaching kindergarten UFly. And I pulled this one out of our video because if you look, this was filmed in January, and you can see what our kindergartners are reading, which is pretty exciting in January of their kindergarten year. But this shows a screenshot. One of the things we got to do was watch a video all together of one of our teachers teaching UFly and then debrief about it. And that was pretty powerful. And people commented that they really found it helpful. The other thing I do is plan professional development days with Katie and late start Wednesdays. And then also last year we started voluntary book clubs, which were pretty exciting. I thought they were after school. We had a K2 one and a 3-5 one, and we focused on two books that helped us talk about and reflect about the shifts we need to make with what research is telling us about reading instruction. So that was exciting too. And then I also do facilitate committee work. Thanks, Damien. All right, so now I'm going to talk to you about, I'm going to share with you some data from our first year of implementing UFly. But before I share that with you, I want to first show you the assessments that our students are doing, so you have the context around what this data is actually showing you. So this is our DIBELS data. This is one of our benchmark assessments that we use 3 times a year, and we give universally. It's called a universal screener because we give it to everybody, K through 5, and it helps us to know how kids are how kids are progressing through the curriculum, and it also helps us to know who do we need to look at who might need some more layers of support. So our DIBELS is a great universal screener because it's quick. It needs to be. We give it to everybody. And these are the subtests that we give in kindergarten. So I want to show you what our kindergartners are doing on this assessment. The first one is letter naming fluency. And it's what it sounds like. They're going through and naming letters from a page that looks like that. This is taken right from the DIBELS. And we don't intervene for this. We don't teach kids to name letters quickly. It's just that this is a very robust predictor of how students will do later with reading. So that's why it's part of this battery of tests. The next one is real word reading, which you can probably tell what it is by looking. Students are given all the same list of words and they're asked to read as many as they can. And you might be thinking, can kindergartners read those at the beginning of the year? And I want to point out that our instructions to them are read as many words as you can. If you don't know it, I will give it to you. So, and that is what we do. That's actually in the direction. So it feels more collaborative, I think, because they're naming a word and then I'm giving them a word and then they're naming a word. And so for the most part, students seem to enjoy getting pulled out and doing these with us. I think they like the one-on-one attention. And then the last one on this page is the phoneme segmentation fluency. And that is a long way to say they're separating words into sounds. So I know Leslie Gallant came and talked to you about Haggerty a while ago. And this is directly from Haggerty. Actually, when we start this, kids are like, this is like what we do in Haggerty. And it is. So I would give them the word mop and they're supposed to chop it into its sounds. Op. Okay, you can move to the next one. And then the last one, the fourth one, is nonsense word reading. And I think this is the one that people have the most questions about, because it's like, why are we having students read nonsense words when we know that their whole purpose of reading is to get to comprehension? And we know that. But this is also the purest, what they say, the purest way to measure decoding. So if you think about it, our kids come to us with all different experiences in reading. Regardless of what word we give them, if it's a real word, someone is probably going to already have it in their lexicon as a sight word. And so we're looking at, if you encounter a word you don't know, how do you sound it out? And that's what this is really looking at. And if you, Damien, if you wouldn't mind clicking, thanks. And if you think about it, these are actually patterns that occur in English quite a bit. They're just syllables. So like hap is part of happen, happy, mishap, haphazard, and lum is part of lumberyard, lumbar, curriculum. And so we're actually having them read syllables that later on in their reading lives, they're probably going to be reading in multisyllabic words. All right. All right, so now I want to finish up by showing you some data from last year. So this is what our DIBELS data looks like. This is, if you go back just a little. This is looking at our nonsense word reading. So this is a subtest that just looks at how kids did with that last subtest I explained to you about. And this is how it's organized. Intensive support, it talks about the level of support DIBELS predicts students will need to meet grade level standards. So intensive is like the red. That's what we refer to it as. And those are the students that we do follow-up screeners with to see like, what else do we need to know? Because you might not be in a good position to meet your grade level expectations. So what are your patterns of strengths and weakness, and do we need to add in a layer of support? And then strategic support is often can be provided in the classroom through tier 1 differentiation, but depending on what their subtest scores look like, we might also look at them for another layer of support. And then core and core support plus, both of those, the DIBELS predicts those students will be fine with tier 1 instruction. So if you want to click, this is what our data look like in 22-23 at the end of the year. So this was the year before we implemented UFly, and this is district-wide, so it's our whole kindergarten, all 7 of our classrooms, all of those students. So, and then in 23-24, this was the year we implemented UFly, and this is just our first year. UFly curriculum goes from kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade, so it's a 3-year curriculum, and these students are in their 1st year of it. And at the end of the year, you can see that our profile in terms of how students read nonsense words looks different from the year that we didn't have it and then the year that we did. And then if you want to click to the next. So this is the composite score. So DIBELS also has a weighted composite where it takes those 4 subtests and combines them. And that's actually the score that we look at for screening because it's the more robust predictor. And you can see there from 22-23 to 23-24. It also looks quite different, especially it's compelling to look at the green and the blue. Those are the students that look like they will benefit from the tier 1 instruction and not need an additional layer of support. So that's pretty compelling, I thought, for our first year, and really speaks to the hard work that our teachers did to implement the program and to learn the routines and the steps to make it successful in their classrooms. And I do have to say there is a ton of enthusiasm around UFly. People are excited because, I mean, they see their own classroom data, but they also see the impacts in the writing and how kids are using their skills in the classroom. So I have one more piece of data to show you. So we were talking about like nonsense word reading and word reading are really looking at print to speech. So if you think about it, you see print on your paper, you process it and you turn it into language. We also want to look at speech to print, which UFly covers both really nicely in their curriculum. Speech to print is like, I have something I want to say. How do I make it into print so I can convey that message? And it's important that we monitor kids' success in both or progress in both. This is our Words Their Way spelling assessment, and it is what it looks like. It's a spelling test, essentially. But kids look at the picture, the teacher says what it's representing, and then the students write those words. And they get 3 points for each word. So like nap, you would get a point for representing the beginning sound, the middle sound, and the ending sound. So it's a total of 15. The authors of Words Their Way say at the end of kindergarten, kids should be at 12. That's their expectation, so 12 points. I'm going to show you, if you go to the next slide, Damien, thank you. I'm going to show you what our scores look like for students who scored 15. So perfect scores on this assessment. Now, again, if you look at the blue, that's 22-23 before we implemented UFly. And you can see beginning of the year, middle of the year, and then end of the year. And these are percentages of students who scored 15. And then if you look at the green, that's our year of implementation, our first year. So you can see that a lot more students, a higher percentage, they're leaving kindergarten representing what we say CVC words, like consonant, vowel, consonant words with a high level of accuracy, which is pretty compelling, I think. And the thing that stands out to me here is that the end of the 2nd trimester, which is that middle green line, compared with the end of year for 22-23, that's pretty amazing. And like by the end of the 2nd trimester in our year of implementation, we were at the same percentage that we were at for the end of the year. And granted, these are different kids. This is a different group of kids. And we'll continue to look at our data as we get further into our implementation. But I wanted to share that as an update of where we are so far. Any questions?
Any questions? So many questions, Jennifer. You want to start? Okay. Who wants to start?
Oh,
Thank you, Beth. That was wonderful. And thank
That
you
was
for
really good.
translating the abbreviations. So we had the all same kind of background knowledge. I forget a lot of what those words mean. One of the things that you touched on, and I'm always curious about, is tier one differentiation skills in the classroom. I moved around a lot in the system, and so I had this wonderful chance of working with so many different kinds of teachers at very different grade levels, and I was wondering, differentiation is the ability to change things. In my understanding, and what I did was, it's very individualized per the need and the student and everything. But is there any kind of standardized programs that would help teachers do that for, let's say, reading or spelling or math?
Are you talking about in tier one, like during classroom
Yes,
instruction?
yes, thank you, yes.
So we have a couple great tools, and actually, one of the things that I love about UFly is that we have a shared scope and sequence now for phonics instruction in kindergarten, first and second grade. One of the things we did at our grade level meetings last year is we got together and we talked about it came from watching the videos, but what areas of UFly are we seeing that we are needing to differentiate, and we need more tools in our toolbox. And so what we did is we actually made a document. One of the examples was handwriting. If you can imagine, like, kids in kindergarten are writing in all different ways. And UFly replaced our handwriting curriculum because it covers that, and we want it to be cohesive. And so we brainstormed what we were each doing, but then I also got to meet with an OT over the summer, and I added all of the suggestions that she gave us. And so now we have that list that we can work from, which isn't a program, which I think you were asking about, but it is a way that we're building cohesion in the way that we differentiate, but also knowing, you never know what need is going to be in front of you. And so working together to come up with different ways. We also have our Lexia, which is a great tool for differentiating, and that is a program that gives us access to skill builders and lesson plans and really nice ongoing data that tells us how kids are doing in their independent work. And we can use that to differentiate. And we do build in reminders of how to do those checks that Lexia asks us to do, and actually provides a really good format for it. It takes 5 minutes a week to get that kind of information. And then we have IXL too, which is another program that we can use to help us kind of have skills that we can work from kind of at the ready for math and for language arts. Did that answer your question? Okay.
It did, thank you. And those are skills that you help within your professional development role, right, in the classrooms?
Yes.
Okay. May I ask one more? Sometimes I notice that when we implement new programs, there's so much excitement about them because it's like it relieves stress for the teachers and the students and the new materials, and it's like just an exciting new way of looking at something. So do you ever see that, like, there is this new program implementation and maybe you get a lot of positive results that first year or maybe the second year, and then does it like level off a little bit? I'm just thinking of previous, programs, which are just like, oh my God, this is going to solve everything. And then, you get into it and you see, all the different uses of it. So what would be your expectations for some of the programs and the data you've shown us so far? Do you think you're going to get another big year bump out of it, or what do you predict?
Well, I can't really predict, but I do think that we're trying to get closer and closer to meeting 80% of our students' needs in the tier one. And I think this is a good move in that direction. I do think not everybody was super excited about UFly when we first started, but I do, because it was a lot of work and people weren't unexcited either. It was just like that enthusiasm wasn't quite there yet, because it's like, okay, we're trying this out. And I think that really came from seeing how it really was filling or meeting that phonics need that we had felt that we wanted to fill for so long. I would hope that our data would continue to grow, maybe not with this big of a jump in our second year, but we're going to do more work to still support teachers. We have one new teacher in that grade span, and so I trained her over the summer. But for the most part, everybody's doing it in their second year, which I think is a good thing. We'll continue to get better at how we differentiate. We also added in more decodable texts those are books that match the phonics pattern students are using in kindergarten, first grade. We know that sometimes students need more practice than what our program provides. And those we brought in, I think, in the spring, like closer to the end of the year last year. And so I think teachers have more materials now that they can use to differentiate and also to provide students with practice outside of the whole group instruction. So I think that might help students become more fluent with the skills too. No problem.
Well, Jamie.
I just wanted to thank you. I think that the effectiveness of your presentation shows what an incredible educator you are and probably what the professional development looks like for a lot of our faculty. So thank you. And I just want to mention, you know, in my head, I'm going all the way back to Katie advocating for the RTI position a couple of years ago. And it's just really rewarding for me to see that it's working and working so well. So thank you very much. We got to go into a classroom and see you fly, and it was just incredible. And having the Hegarty presentation, I thought was really incredible. And I think one thing that I'm really excited about, not only with the progress, but just consistency throughout the district is really exciting for me. And I think that helps families, it helps students, it helps everybody. So well done, both of you. It's really exciting to see. And then 2 questions. Midcoast Literacy is an incredible local organization. Is there any sort of collaboration with them around helping them use these tools with students? Or I know they're, I think, going through a strategic planning process right now, so I didn't know if anybody had communication with Midcoast Literacy.
Sure.
So we have, I met with the executive director, and right now, because they're really spending their time on building up their personnel, we didn't get to the point of talking about making curriculum consistent. However, we are trying to connect their tutors with many of our multilingual students, so they have consistent services throughout the summer as well, and that's really been our focus of collaboration so far.
Thank you. I know time is very
Yeah.
valuable for everyone and limited. And then my next question, are there any resources or tools that you find yourself wishing that you had in order to do this work?
I was thinking about that actually earlier today because I remembered that question came up last time too. And I do have to say that we have been able to bring in like the decodable text that support the UFI. Every single student has a magnetic board with letters. We worked with Kelly Brochu and made the sound walls that are in all of our classrooms. And so it has been very well supported in terms of materials that we have needed to get. The same, I think, with the bridge to writing. You know, it was like, we're going to have a pilot and everybody, you'll have what you need for the year. So I feel like I'm advocating for what we need when we need it and identifying it. We were just able to train our interventionists in 2 new programs that they can use in tier 2. That we were able to get. So I can't identify anything at this point. I did get some nice feedback from a teacher in one of our trainings, and she said, I feel like what we're bringing in just makes so much sense, you know, and that was anecdotal, but it was nice to hear, like, oftentimes we're working as committees and deciding and then figuring out what we need. And I feel like we're often able to do that. Thank you.
Great. Kurt?
Yeah, thanks. I was just would echo Jamie that thank you for all the work that you do. And this is really inspiring. I was just wondering if there may not be resources, but is there enthusiasm for sort of tracking this year to year, not, with the same cohort or the, same students?
Yes.
Or, if kindergarten to first grade, then what happens with that group, first to second?
Yes. One of the things that I am excited about that we were able to bring in is Amplify, which is what has our DIBELS data. It's also where our progress monitoring data is, and it actually holds for us a historical record of how students are doing through the years, and it's a tool that I can use to do that kind of data looking. And we actually have a data committee starting this year where we'll be looking at our classroom data as a representative group of classroom teachers. And then bringing those protocols back to our schools so that we'll get better at looking at our classroom data too. But I think that will lead to more ways of looking. If that makes sense. Did that answer your question? Okay.
That's great. Other questions? Any other questions, comments? Yeah, Kate.
I just wanted to draw your attention to this packet as well, because Beth's passion and dedication to this work this is just a fraction of what she's been able to
Mhm.
do. All of this is also what's been put in place. And truly, she, to Jamie's point, has changed how everything is done in the elementary schools, not so teachers are locked in, to Jen's point. But we do have a schedule that has expectations of what programs to use, not how people specifically have to do everything. So I think teachers feel they can still be creative and still execute things the way they want, but there's consistency with what is being learned and how that's being taught. And we really have one person to thank for that.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for reminding me to mention the handout. I totally forgot.
No,
I
it's-
knew this was short, so I wanted to just give you
No,
more of a
no, that's
picture.
great. I mean, there's a lot, you can tell there's a lot in here, it crosses many subjects and it's very important. And yeah, so it sounds like, creating the position and doing all that, this is the fruit coming to fruition, everything you'd hoped it would be, right?
One more quick thing.
Yeah.
Money.
Oh, here we go.
Everything we were able to do was
Mhm.
because of ARP.
Wow.
And so there will be asks in the future. For instance, we are looking to possibly change or update our math program this year.
Hmm.
That's part of this process. Social studies as well, again, to make everything consistent. We purchased as much as we possibly could with those ARP funds, including pre-ordering all the decodable stuff, the bridge to writing, so it would not ding the local budget at all. But eventually, there will be
So,
a
and-
cost to this consistency.
Right,
and
and so when you
quality.
say eventually, you mean next year, the year after?
Ne-
I mean,
yeah,
is it like one subject when you start
Yeah,
mentioning
what-
different subjects? Is it one subject each year?
We're
or is
tiering it so we chip away a little at a time, so it's not as if one year there'll be a huge hit
Right.
with all the subjects.
So
we use something.
because we had the boost of that ARP money, it got us started, it got us
Correct.
going.
It also purchased a very expensive middle school math curriculum.
Mhm.
Truly, when we wrote the project for ARP, that it would rebuild the skill gaps. I mean, I'm sure Deb could pull up.
Yeah.
But we benefited
Sure.
immensely in terms of the quality of the resources we were able to purchase and the amount of training we were able to do.
Good. Well, thanks for that clarity. So we'll be ready in March for some discussion about that. Any other comments, concerns? But did you have one more? Yeah, go ahead.
Just a quick question. Was the figuring out fluency in mathematics, was that part of a resource for the teachers that were looking at piloting the other two math programs?
So that book was our interventionist book study that we did, not this year, but last year, as a way to talk about math fluency while we were working on that as a district with MMSA for K-5.
Do you have any extra copies?
I may.
I'll take a look at it.
Oh, yes, I definitely have one you can look at.
Oh, good. Well, thank you. And so have we decided, has there been like a decision to change the K-5 math program? Is that been reached to? No, not
No.
yet.
We're in the middle.
Yeah, we're in the middle of our piloting.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. It was a wonderful presentation and it really helps us to see where, when we, allocate funds and we see where things go. And it's just always wonderful to see how it's really coming together and everybody's really happy. So thank you all for your hard work. Appreciate it. Thanks so much, Beth.
Thank you.
All right. So now we have our senior student representative, Aurora. You have a report for us?
Yes, I do. So for starters, we welcome the freshman class. I was there on orientation day and it looked like there were a lot of them. Looking forward to that. They're getting settled in. They just held their elections for student officers, and I think they just held last week their elections for SCLC, which is what brought me here. Homecoming is coming up. That's going to be on October 5th, both the dance and the game, I believe. And Spirit Week is next week, so everyone's looking forward to that. For sports, just today, varsity golf and field hockey both had away games, as well as JV football. In the drama realm, the auditions for the fall play, which are 10-minute plays, are tomorrow and Thursday, I believe, after school. So those are going to be happening soon. And we have the two new permanent teachers, Mr. Gordon and Mr. Burns. Students have welcomed them. I've heard good things. I have Mr. Gordon for basic piano, and he's shown some grit, so I like that. And then finally, the NHS induction ceremony is on Wednesday. We have our president as Gaffney McDonough and our vice president as Waylon Rohr.
Thank you very much. Any questions? All right. Patrick, take it away.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I just wanted to, you have it in your packet at Morse, but it's worth mentioning that this is the second year in a row that we had all of our AP exams, and that's 16 of them. That we 16 courses that we give. And you could see from the data that Eric gave you that every single score that was an average of our students was above the state and the national, average. And so it's very, very impressive. And I just would like to thank the staff, Eric's leadership, the students. It's a rigorous curriculum and higher level thinking, students pushing themselves and working hard at that. So you can see all of the averages in the backup. And then you can also see that we had 52 students earn the AP Scholar Award, 6 AP Capstone Diploma and 7 AP Capstone Certificate. And then, I think Eric did a nice job. He's here tonight if he wants to comment, but that impact, it's not just about getting into the college that you want. It certainly helps. But when you get there, it can also be credit, which can be money at the same time. And just, the rigor of this, when you see parents or you see students come back and talk about that they're able to handle a lot of their classes, I wouldn't say easily, but they have that skill and they have that confidence. And so it's a great program, and would like just to thank again staff and students for all that they do there. Next thing, just a quick update on Archie, which is our golden doodle at Woolwich. I think I mentioned it to you last year. So he has officially started this year. He's coming a couple days a week. He gets, half days. He gets a little tired, and really going around to every homeroom just to get acclimated to the students can get acclimated to him and the sounds that happen in a school building. And just, he has been doing a little bit of, I guess I would say one-to-one work sometimes or with small groups and helping out. But I think Jason put it well, is I don't know if the staff or the students are enjoying him more, but it's been great. So maybe sometime you can meet Archie. So it's been, yes, he does. Yes. I gave you guys enrollment data. Jen had asked a question by email. Really the biggest population burst happened at Woolwich. And I think it's a combination of things when I went back and looked. We have some people that moved in. We have some new builds, believe it or not, in Woolwich, because we have to ask sometimes parents for proof that, that they're under construction. And then we had Georgetown students. We had a decent group of them that all, chose Woolwich Middle School to come to. So that increased that number. And I think we had a smaller 8th grade class going up to Morse and a bigger one coming in, to kindergarten. So all those factors, it wasn't one thing that really stood out in that. So, and it's spread out pretty well, quite frankly. The class sizes are not near the class size, the ceiling of the class size policy. So.
And do we have choice still, like internal?
Yeah, we have school choice.
Okay.
Yep.
And is that part of those numbers too?
We didn't really, I can get back to you by email, but we didn't really accept a great deal of school choice students or have that many applications for it, quite frankly, this year. So, but we, ones that have started, if a sibling wants to go, then we usually try to make that work.
Yeah.
And again, we have that policy that talks about if it's going to require, or if it's going to get us to a ceiling or require another teacher, we're not going to approve those.
Okay.
So,
All right.
yep.
Is Woolwich at capacity? You know, what do you, in
I-
terms of the current staffing?
I think, I mean, the biggest capacity thing right now is busing, transportation, because, you know, if all students ride on a certain route that we had when we had to go from 5 to 4 drivers, it put that at capacity, but not as far as class size. I'm sure I haven't had that many conversations with Jason yet. I'm sure maybe when there's transitions or things like that, you know, there's some more students, but it's back to where we used to be at you know, certain times in the past. So, yeah. Last thing I'll just ask Katie just quickly to mention, I mentioned to you a couple weeks ago in an email backup about multi-language students and how we have more this year. And we also have ones that students that require more services. And so I just wanted Katie quickly to give you an update, and it may be something that we're going to have to look to, you know, bring on a support staff position to help meet their needs that we're obligated to do.
Yep. So we ended last year with around low 20s, maybe 22 multilingual students. Right now we have 32. And so obviously the 10 more is something we couldn't have planned for in our budget because we couldn't predict the future. Just so everyone's aware, because I think the requirements for ML are not as familiar as, for instance, required IEP supports. All of these students take a test called WIDA, and basically, if they score on this test below a 3, so a 2.9 and below, they're required to get 2 hours of direct services a day. That can either be push in or pull out, or a mix. Often it's a mix of both. And right now, of the 32, we have 15 students who have no English or a very little English proficiency, which is why they're scoring 2.9 and below. 17 of those students are scoring 3 and above. I think the highest is a 5. They require 1 hour of service. And so currently, our staffing, so if you think about that, 1 student times 2 hours a day is 10 hours. We currently have 1 teacher and 2 ed tech 3s for 4 schools and 32 students. And so Patrick and I will continue looking at the numbers. I think it's a really good problem to have in so many ways because it brings so much to our student body and the culture in our buildings. But the threshold for where you start receiving funds through Title III is 75 students. So we're very far from getting any extra funds to support this program. And so I'll send you an email tomorrow with more of this data so you can see it. But don't be surprised if we have a posting up fairly soon for an Ed Tech 3 to make sure we're meeting as many influx of new students.
And are most of these students, are they from all different
Mhm.
places, or are
Yeah.
we getting, because sometimes we get an influx from, you know,
Yeah,
specific place or?
That's a great question. I would say Mandarin and Portuguese are the 2 languages currently where we have the most
Really?
students.
Okay.
However, even within those, there's different dialects.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we have Spanish-speaking students. We have French-speaking students. We have a Japanese student.
So it really is, I mean,
It truly
really
is
a
all
mix.
over the
Great,
place.
okay.
And the first language, depending on what it is, also impacts the cost of things like translation.
Mhm.
To get something translated into Spanish is a much smaller cost than to get something
Mandarin.
translated into Mandarin,
Yeah.
for instance.
Yeah.
And so one of the things we've actually done is just purchased iPads for the teachers who have students with, very little proficiency, because there's a new program where you can translate things that are digital with Google Translate. But if I had this worksheet here and I didn't have a digital copy, the student or the teacher can take a picture and it immediately translates the paper document into a digital one in their language on
Wow.
it. So that's something we're going to start training people in, and it's exciting.
Wow, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
How are we as a district addressing that through different newsletters and other communications that are going out besides just Google Translate?
So our messaging system, which I can't remember the name of, if a family requests a different language, it translates, when it goes through that system, it translates it into the language that's listed in IC. So either voice or text. And secondly, we have a program called Reach My Teach, which all the teachers who have students who are in the MLO program have, where they can text. They use their computers to type, but it will text parents in their home language, email, and call. And these are all new things that Elizabeth Ratty has done a great job of researching and helping us figure out.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I think my last question too, in Sarah's report, we saw that there were 20 new IEP students registered in August for this school year. And do we have enough resources or manpower to sort of support those needs?
And are those the 20,
Uh,
the 20 to 32 students talking about?
No. I don't know the exact number of students who would be on the ML caseload who also have an IEP. It's very small, maybe 2, 3 of the 32. And I know that Sarah's looking at that. I couldn't speak to her that question though. I don't know if Patrick or Deb would want to.
Yeah, I mean, we're in constant contact if talking about, do we need to add support at some point? But right now, I think we're feeling okay.
Great. Go ahead, Jim.
Katie, are the new students, are they exchange students or they're not exchange students? And are they, do their entire families have the same language processes? Okay, so we don't know if we're reaching beyond the classroom. It's not just like they're, we often have students come into the district that are just the student has those issues, not they're adopted or something,
I would say it's the family, the adult filling out the paperwork. So in all likelihood, that person probably speaks the same language as they're requesting for the student. Sometimes the parent needs more support for translation than a student does, depending on what level they've moved through in our systems. Because we actually have more than 32, but they've aged out to be on a monitor status where they might get a check-in or an occasional help, but they're not getting direct services.
Great. Kurt, go ahead.
Real quick, do you know roughly where they are in grade level, or like what grades they're in? Is it mostly elementary?
No, it's everywhere. So it's Dyke Newell, Fisher, BMS, and Morse. I would say right now, Fisher, I don't know, they're actually spread out pretty everywhere. I don't know how to say, what's the word? They fall in pretty regularly into all 4 of those buildings right now.
Okay.
The Fisher probably has slightly higher number, but not by very much.
So most of them look at that.
Yes. We have had a few students in Vicksburg, but they are now at the middle school.
Wow, that's quite a lot more than we thought. So people are moving. Okay, great. Anything else? No? Thank you, Katie. Did you have any? You want to go to the fundraiser?
No, just, the next one, 9.2 is just fundraising, just a list in your backup, and it's an FYI, just so that you kind of have a pulse of what's going on in the district, that's all.
Yeah,
I just want to say thank you to all the people who do this fundraising. It's on top of everything else they have to do. It takes a lot of effort and it really makes so many of these things possible. So a deep appreciation from me for all of that work. Thank you.
well said. All right, Deb, you're up.
Okay, so I have a few budget items to think about already, see? Katie, you know. Okay, so tonight we're looking at August, and first thing I want to point out on this financial report that was in your packet is the date on the bottom, obviously, for the enrollment was incorrect on the first column. It should have been 23,
Right,
comparing last year to this year. And I also want to point out that I pulled those numbers from the Infinite Campus summary report, and as you all know, enrollment's sort of a moving target. So if you see different numbers and different reports, that's the reason why. But bottom line is obviously Woolwich is the one that's higher this year. Okay, so August, basically, what we're seeing with the expenditures is a higher percentage in the categories that our salaries. We have July contract, August contract, and September contract. So July and August are what you're seeing here reflected mostly. As far as student and staff report, student and staff support in that cost center is basically your contracted fees for your software and that type of thing. System administration, that's the beginning of the administrative contract, which is in August, and then operation and maintenance is a higher percentage because that's also July contract employees and summer work. So bottom line is we're at about 6% expended so far, which is in line with pretty much how we spend from year to year. And as far as the revenues, then we're about 16%, 15.5%, which is once again about the same as it was last year. Just to give you an update, Hank, our financial consultant, has finished with his financial statements and they've been uploaded to RHR Smith, the auditors, and they'll start their work next. So
Okay.
the goal is to have everything done, of course, by December to Department of Ed. And so we're moving. We have our first payroll is done. So now it's like, okay, now I can start looking at budget versus actual and those types of things to bring to you.
And that's all with new
next month.
contracts.
Yes.
So you got all the new numbers.
We
Okay.
have all the new numbers and you have a sheet to sign.
I
which
just did.
probably is. So you have,
We're all set.
we're good.
All signed, all good. Okay, great. Any questions? Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Deb. All right, there's nothing under old business today, correct? New business. We have 11.1 to approve the Midcoast pediatrician contract. This is an action item. Go ahead.
Yeah, and it's just our annual contract with Dr. Hannah, who our nurse group still uses. Katie and I use her, and principals, you know, as needed. So it's been a great resource. So it's no changes from last year.
Okay, may I have a motion?
Sure, I move to approve the Midcoast pediatrician contract.
Okay, great. May I have a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Jamie. Any other questions? All in favor? Okay, that passes. Thank you. Then there is a Schedule B appointments, which I think it's attached, right?
Yeah, just a FYI with the appointments, and then you can see if there's any openings. So it's just again, FYI for you.
Great.
Quick question.
No, or they might decide that they want to split it. So the stipend gets split in therefore.
Okay. Yes, sure.
Patrick, is there any way of knowing, I was pretty sure this used to be a 2-pager report, but I know I've been around for a little while. It seems like the number is growing. I don't know that. Is there any way of like looking at how the number of these positions has grown over the last
Um,
5 years or something.
yeah, we can, I mean, there's some that we haven't filled because the need hasn't been there and we
Sure.
just, they sit there unfilled and we might use it, that stipend for something else if like, especially during COVID, if one sports team had a lot of numbers and we wanted to, hire an assistant there instead of a team that didn't have as many numbers. And we have the Schedule B committee that's going to be starting to meet this year as part of the contract as well. So, yeah, I can look back at some history too.
Just a general kind of, thank you.
Great. Any other questions?
I guess if there's like a position that's not filled, what happens? Just looking at like assistant track, or if you had a head coach or, what happens if that position doesn't get filled by the time they need it?
If it doesn't get filled, you mean? No, well, I mean, in that case, our athletic director would try to figure out, what we could do or how many numbers we could take, or if we need to look for, continue. It doesn't happen that much, but, yeah. And then, with the board and with the association, if we're looking to add, usually that gets talked about during the budget process. Or if we look to say, hey, we haven't filled this, use this in 5 years, it would be the same kind of process with the association, with the board to say, this is something that, we need to look at doing something different with.
And that's why we have the committee for that to discuss.
Yeah, I was more thinking.
I mean, that's possible. I mean, we've had a few here. I mean, Eric, math team has debate team. So, and like, I think Eric's doing a creative thing right now with another school with debate to see if we can make it happen for our kids. And the other thing I would say too is, Andrew and Eric and Nate in the past have done a nice job we have a few cooperative teams. So when we have a co-op team with Mount Airy or Brunswick, we don't always have to provide a coach. Sometimes we provide like a volunteer or maybe an assistant coach. So.
Yeah, I think the two that it's been most common with in recent years are math team and debate team, near and dear to Aurora's heart here. So we're trying to figure out like our actually debate is the one that's left, and so we're trying to figure that out. So if there's anybody out there watching who wants to be the debate coach, we're looking for that, or co-oping, which has proven to be tricky in debates. But
okay, yep. Thanks. All right, 11.3 overnight field trip request.
Yeah, and you have that in your backup.
Yep.
Leslie Trundy and the outing club, and to go to Camden for one night.
Any questions on that? Want a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Okay. And second, all right, all in favor? All right, that's approved. Got that done. And then we're going to move up to 13.0 board goals. Anything specific today?
So I mean, these are pretty good goals. I mean, I know that we probably should change them each year. I mean, I think they're pretty inclusive. One of the things on the facilities listing, I didn't know if we should address the potential, new school application for BMS in Phippsburg, along with the mention of the 2 elementary schools in Bath. I don't know.
Add that to the goals.
Well, I
Like
just
the
kind of
specificity, I mean. Yeah.
addressing it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's how high that is or how that looks like it's going to be a next year thing or not.
Okay.
And then, I mean, I would say tonight, goal 3 was kind of a focus for us to help, Okay. Oh, well, I thought that's where you were going. I didn't know that's where you were going. I thought that's where you were going to go first. All right, go ahead.
Yes, thank you for that question. I think we did a great accomplishment of meeting our goal 3 pre-K through 5 programming skills, and we're all very, very appreciative of Beth's hard work.
Stealing your thunder. All right. Next meeting is going to be Monday, October 28th, right here. We're gonna ask for adjournment, and then we're going to take a tour of the learning space outside.
I move to adjourn.
3 people second it. Okay, all in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
I'd like to see a record. I think I'm always the one.